Oh man, we're so bad.
Are you kidding me? I just made a great save. It told me in a pop-up.
Oh, so bad.
Alright. But what the heck is going on? Am I in the game? I am.
Yeah, we're just joining them now.
We just do like a introduction. You can like talk about your education experience. Doing great.
Doing great. So you want to introduce me, or should I introduce myself?
I think just like do like a brief talk about your you do it. I just need something, you know?
You need something. Okay, so my name is Paulo. I finished my thesis master's in architecture about 2 years ago. It was about developing an anarchist spatial practice. Now I work as an intern architect working towards licensure, but on the side I'm also an adjunct instructor at the School of Architecture at Waterloo. And currently the studio that I'm teaching, or adjunct teaching, is a music studio, it's called. It's an option studio. It's a small group of kids. There's 16 of them. And it's just it's a studio. I don't know what much more to say, and it's all based on music. So the first class I was at was them starting to develop the program and the sort of spaces that they want to do. So some kids are doing or some students rather, I shouldn't say kids. Some students are interested in rehearsal spaces, others are interested in venue spaces, others are interested in busking spaces. There's a pretty big variety of what people are interested in, and I think the studio is good for that because it's pretty open as to what they can do. Basically, it's totally up to them. Ultimately, they decide what musician they're inspired by. They pick what kind of space they want to do. They basically pick the site, they pick the program, and then we just critique it and give them a mark for it, which is kind of strange.
This is through the university?
Yeah.
Huh. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, studios in architectural school are typically it's a full term. It's typically also the most amount of hours you do per week. Like when I was in school, it was 9 hours in class, and they always say, "Oh, you have to multiply that by 3 for the total time you have to devote towards the class."
Okay.
So in architecture school, the emphasis is studio and pretty much nothing else, which is kind of strange. I don't know necessarily.
That's probably good though, right?
I mean, I would say so.
Practice and...
It depends how it manifests itself. I mean, a lot of the way a studio typically works for other years, so these are third-year students, so the way a studio has worked for them in the past is it's basically a prof develops a studio idea and then gives them a program, gives them a site, and then basically says, I'll design a building for these parameters, and they work on that for a term, and they have deliverables, maybe 3 deliverables a term, and they're basically, the way that manifests itself is it's a presentation that they have to give with drawings and an oral presentation. Sometimes a physical built model. So what is sort of interesting about this option studio is it's a little bit more loose. The outline is just pick a building, a typology, a program, as long as it has to do with music, just do your thing. And it's a way of, it was never really explained to me why it's done this way, but all the parameters are sort of taken away, and the students are basically, it's up to them to decide how much work to do, what kind of work to do. I remember the last time I taught this, this studio, there was a huge range of student work. There were some students who just chose to do a massive tower building with maybe a little performing theater at the base, and other students just basically found like this building in Toronto and appropriated it to like be this like music like light show. So the range of work is very wide. So I feel like the approach of teaching something like that is sort of weird.
Yeah. So like when you're teaching, because architecture's weird and it's kind of like a mixture between like engineering kind of stuff and art. Is that?
Yeah, that's typically what architectural teachers say. It's a mix of art and like pragmatics, like art and engineering. So it is a little strange. Like teaching, as like when I practice in real life, I have to deal with practical things every single day. So when I teach, when I was teaching on Thursday, it was weird to suppress all of the sort of pragmatics, because it's a non sequitur almost to architectural education. It's like, because really nobody really cares about like building code, even though they should.
Yeah.
But it's typically always handed off as being like, oh, they'll take care of this. It's weird because the students are in this like schematic design phase where they're only like experimenting in like sort of spatial qualities. So as a practitioner, I have to sort of think about how to critique their work while being like sort of relevant to what they're actually working on, because at this point it's like sort of not important to talk about
like building code and stuff.
Yeah, building code or like accessibility. Like accessibility and building code is obviously always in everybody's like mind, and like it's a helpful reminder. But I'm not going to be like, all right, this needs to be 1,500 millimeters wide and so on and so forth. It's aesthetics, but also it's almost like a check to make sure that their idea, like that everything that they do is based on like an actual thought, and like nothing is arbitrary, because like bad design is always like arbitrary or like aesthetic, and good design is always something that is very seriously considered and like thoroughly vetted and experimented with, and like so it's never really about aesthetics. And I will say that my aesthetic, sort of what I think looks good, is almost never in line with what the students think looks good. But it's not my role to say like, oh, I don't like the way this looks. And I was always told when I was actually going to school that like a professor that says they either like or dislike something is a professor that like doesn't know what they're doing and is not providing any sort of constructive criticism.
Yeah.
So I try to stay away from that. I mean that's sort of what's weird about architecture schools, because like I feel like the academic portion of architecture, it's all geared towards providing, like being really artsy and being really like sort of aesthetically like critical, and it tries to incorporate all sorts of politics and like sort of manifest itself in an architectural design. And it's almost like a fallacy. It's like you sell this education that tells kids that, oh, you're going to be the next Frank Gehry or the next Zaha Hadid, and you're going to make beautiful buildings. So it's like disincentivized to tell them about like actual pragmatic architecture. Like it's almost like a dirty word to talk about like all of the nitty gritty of architecture, which is like contracts, which is legislation, which is like authorities having jurisdiction. It's all this other stuff that is not interesting to students.
I'm actually surprised that it's not the other way. That's kind of interesting.
And the thing that's interesting about architecture school, or the thing that I think is interesting about architecture school, is that there's so much variety from school to school. Like Ryerson was quite a bit more technical than Waterloo was. But, and like U of T, I think, is even way more conceptual and theoretical.